It is 7:00 p.m. I will call this special meeting of the Waterbury Select Board to order for Tuesday, January 27th, 2026 at 7:00 p.m. Our first item of business is to approve the agenda. Is there a motion with regards to the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda with the addition of a letter of support for trail grants for Revitalize Waterbury and a special events permit for Black Cap Workers United.
When would you like those on the agenda?
We can do the special event permit usually when we always do them, so at the end, so before updates. And then we can just do the letter of support right before that, so after or just before our 8:50 agenda items,
Okay,
if that works for everyone.
yes, there's a second for Kane's motion.
Second.
All right, so motion by Kane, second by Mike to approve the agenda as written with 2 additions. After the 8:40 agenda item, we will review a letter of support for a trails grant and then a special event permit we've received. Is there any further questions about the agenda? Right, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Right, the agenda is approved. We will move to our next item, which is the consent agenda. We just have one item to approve the minutes of our last special select board meeting on January 20th, 2026. Is there a motion with regards to the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second. Motion by Kane, second by Tori to approve the consent agenda. Is there any questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Noting for the record that Roger Clapp is not yet present, so both of those motions passed 4-0. All right, that brings us to public comment. Sorry, we have one more online.
Oh, thank you.
This brings us to public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone who would like to speak to something that is not on the warrant agenda for this evening. We ask that you keep your comments under 5 minutes. If you need more time, we're happy to schedule you for a future select board meeting. We ask that folks in the room come up to the table to help with the owl. I will note that, sorry, more online. I am pointing to Cheryl Casey, our minute taker here in the room, who is also running the Zoom titled Waterbury Select Board. This week's lucky select board winners are Mike and Kane. We have tried to update the owl so that it alternates around the room, and it's not working, and we will try and fix it, but we're gonna do our best to talk and be loud. So by way of Alyssa's public comments, those are the welcome and orientation to the meeting. And Roger Clapp has arrived at 7:04. So with all of that, is there anyone in the room or online who would like to speak on public comment? Mike?
2 words. Go Patriots. Quick and to the point.
Thanks, Mike. Tori?
I would like to just say, I know that we are still having trouble with the Orca recordings and sound, but Cheryl Casey has very brilliantly figured out how to put the Zoom links for the meetings on to the website, and I very much appreciate all of her efforts on that, because I know it was not easy.
Anyone else who would like to speak on public comment? In the room or online, Chris?
Just a question for our interim town manager. I understand that the town shed's been using a fair amount of sand. They hadn't hauled some in. Any idea where it's coming from and what it's costing us per yard? I'm just curious.
I could get you those numbers, yes. Yep.
Anyone else, Evan?
With all the snow lately, I've been hearing complaints from a lot of people about the state of the sidewalks down here in the village. I'm just wondering if there's anything that can be done to get those cleared out a little better and a little faster. I know after this past storm, they were cleared out a lot faster than they have been in the past, or at least it seemed that way to me. But it's still rough walking in a few spots out there.
Yeah, we've been getting a lot of comments on the sidewalks. Evan's not wrong. Some of the delay on doing the sidewalks relates to staffing. We are short-staffed at the highway department. And the route that gets shortchanged is the sidewalk route. The truck routes are all covered first. So it does take a little longer to do those sidewalks than it has in the past. I did send an email out on some complaints we had today with the promise that I would meet with the highway foreman and the person who does the sidewalks, and we're maybe prioritize some areas a little differently.
Glad to hear that.
Thanks, Evan. Anyone else who would like to speak on public comment in the room or online? Anyone online that can't raise their hand? Okay. Going once, going twice, I will move to our next agenda item, which is review of allowable uses for the proposed Natural Disaster Reserve Fund. At our last select board meeting and in many of the preparation meetings leading up to town meeting, we've talked about creating a natural disaster reserve fund. We've also talked about having an outlined collection of uses for that. Tori agreed to come up with a draft for that. I made some edits and Tom made some edits, and that's the document that is posted and that the board has for review. So we can discuss if we want to take action on this tonight, and I will just note it will also come up on our review of the town meeting warrant, not this specifically, but the reserve fund. Tom, Tori, Woody, anyone want to add to anything I just said?
No.
I will note the biggest change is that Tom added infrastructure as a potential allowable use, which I guess the board can discuss. But just in my mind, wanting to have the homework done of what we thought we would use this fund for before we're pitching it to voters to create it and then fund it at town meeting. And we could adopt this at a later meeting if we would like.
No, I'm fine with the edit. There's a disaster, after infrastructure, so lots of things. That's it.
Thanks, Tori.
I'll stand opposed to the Oxford comma.
Cool, so I move to approve the natural disaster reserve funds
Allowable uses.
allowable uses as proposed.
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion on this? Any questions from the board?
Tom, do you want to just explain why you added the clause?
The
And yell loudly, please.
flood of 2024, we had, our FEMA claim was almost exactly $500,000. That was infrastructure.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the board? Questions from the public? I'll start with Sandy online. Go ahead.
Hi, I was just, I can't see that anywhere. Was that something you handed out there? I don't see it online.
I think it says Natural Disaster Fund TTAJ TL edits that is posted under this meeting.
Okay, maybe it's, okay. I'll,
It is.
I'll look. I'll look.
Ooh, we have a really weird format online. I don't know. We can. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll just name, there's a ton of discussion in the room. I have to facilitate the meeting tonight. I personally, Alyssa Johnson, have been at the municipal offices since 3 p.m. And so we posted a lot of materials right before this meeting and have them in print copy for the select board to review. So I will state publicly the name of the document online. We have printed copies in the room for anyone who would like them. Is there other questions or comments? Yep, Cheryl Lord.
And I couldn't find a copy in the room.
Okay.
They are, I'm looking at it right now. It says Natural Disaster Fund TT. Just AJTL edits under related files on the meeting. Okay, well, that is. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Time to refresh. All good, glad it's there.
Okay, and Sandy is also noting that she sees it now, and I'm totally acknowledged, most of these were posted at 6 PM today. Is there any other questions, comments from the public on this or from the board?
I do have a question.
Yes, coming up.
So. Again, I appreciate these are posted. They're not posted in a timely manner, but that's okay. I got it. It's 3 o'clock, but. When you're gonna vote on something of that nature and public can't see it, it's not transparent. Okay, so that's one comment. Second comment would be, and I absolutely concur with the reserve funds. Is there a process by which FEMA would be, if they're operational, would be reimbursing in which that reserve fund would be paid back first?
There certainly could be.
Okay, so a non-answer, but appreciate it. So it could be, but would be decided by the select board, or are we gonna reconstitute the fund?
I think if I can, Tom, since I drafted it, so this is for the allowable uses, it's not so much like
It's
you.
very generic, right?
Yeah, it's very generic, so yes, ideally FEMA would. Be able to give us money and then that amount of fund, that money that was reimbursed would go back into the fund. Ideally, but the reason why we made this fund was specifically for stuff to cover that maybe FEMA would not reimburse as well. Which is kind of addressed in the use of the fund section on the last sentence.
Yeah, I think fundamentally though, when you put in there overtime of staff, right, that's something I would think would be FEMA reimbursed. When I just read this, as you just presented here, it seems very generic, and that's good, it gives you great flexibility. The challenge I had again is if this reserve fund is gonna be reconstituted, we've talked about it not just being flood. It could be anything, right, that would constitute a natural disaster.
Right.
And then on that topic, I guess, the natural disaster coordinator is just that. Are they going to be part of the decision process for that? Use of that funds?
I'm gonna defer this to that since. It's a future use of the funds.
It's kind of a legitimate question, though, right? You're paying someone a stipend.
Well, so my understanding is that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that the committee does not approve the use of the funds, select board.
Right, select board does spend that.
That's probably the recommendation of the committee, so, I mean,
It just,
But
your
yeah,
policy
there-
remains silent on it. Just pointing out that if you have a position to which you're paying a stipend, you'd imagine that that person would be somehow responsible for use and management of that disaster, right? And whether or not they have to leverage that fund. So why wouldn't they be part of that process?
I think they would be, and the select board would probably take the advice and release the funds accordingly.
Okay, that's all. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So I'll note we had a motion and a second to approve this. I just said there's nothing that obligates or requires us to approve it. So there's a motion on the table the select board can take an action on. The select board could also choose to review this at a later time to allow for more comment and review. Again, this was the agenda item requested by the board at the last meeting. We are here at the next meeting to review the item, and it's up to the board. Is there other questions or comments?
I'll just say that I compliment Tori on the drafting, and I think it meets the expectation that we set out at the last meeting, and so I'm gonna support that we pass it right now.
Other questions or comments from board members? Other questions or comments from the public? All right, does everyone understand the motion we're voting on? To adopt the allowable uses as presented? All right. And if folks online want to comment, we can't actually read the comments, so you would need to raise your hand, be recognized, and make a comment in an audio format. Does anyone online want to comment? Well, I'm sorry, Amy, I am not always able to read every comment out loud. Is there other questions or comments? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes to adopt the allowable uses. That will bring us to our next agenda item. The next agenda item was to review of allowable uses for a housing trust fund. Kane volunteered to take this one on. Linked online is Housing Reserve Fund Article KS Draft, which is what Kane shared with the board. I will note that the town meeting warning, which is our next agenda item, also has some draft language pertaining to this that I adopted based on this, but I'll turn it over to you, Kane.
Yeah, first time writing an article, or a potential article. So essentially, we heard recommendations from community member Sandy Sabin about moving the trust into a reserve fund, much like the one that we just passed allowable uses for. That allows a housing trust fund, in essence, to stay a fund, without direct intervention from the select board. And allows us to move the money that we have allocated for a housing trust into a reserve fund, with some listed allowable uses. I understand that the format might skirt some legal questions, which I will gladly take.
All right. Is there questions or comments for Kane on this? I guess I'll just also name going into the warning question, or question is if we want to add articles relating to this to the warning before we finalize it for town meeting.
I'll go ahead and say that was the idea, was to get an article on the warning pertaining to this. It doesn't have to be this exact article language, but I'm open to edits.
Questions or comments from the board? Roger?
Did we get any legal review of this? Yeah.
Not that I'm aware.
I'm just wondering, Tom, if you feel, based on your experience with this, whether in support of housing initiatives and incentives to further Waterbury's goals of affordable housing for residents, both current and future, meets the requirements of defining allowable uses.
So if you go a couple pages further back in your packet, there's 2 pages exactly. There's language in the warning. Not numbered, but it's Article 12. That would give the very simple legal language that mimics the language used for the natural disaster reserve. So first article would be to create the reserve, the second would be to fund it. That language has been approved previously by council. It's very generic language related to a reserve. My suggestion is if you're creating a reserve, treat it like the natural disaster reserve, where there's a related policy. There already is a policy related to the housing trust fund, so I'm sure you need to read those
Right.
deals.
I was just about to say the same thing. We already have a policy for the trust, which very easily translate to the reserve.
Right.
I appreciate you doing this work, Kane, and drafting this proposed article language, but I'm wondering if article on number 12 and the article on number is supposed to be 13, 2 pages in, would accomplish the same
I think it would.
thing? And maybe we should just sub in this
Yeah.
amount into the word that says amount on that and
Yeah,
call it a day.
I couldn't agree more. I think this language that is written in the draft, Ghost Article 12 and Ghost Article follow-up, 12 and a half. Seems much less wordy than my article. For sure, and if language like this has already been approved by council, I think we should just go ahead with it.
That a motion?
I move to, if I can. Chair to entertain a motion.
I'm happy to entertain a motion if you want, and we're discussing the warning yet, so we can make a motion or we can move this into our next agenda item. I do know that we have 2 members of the public, maybe 3, who had comments. So I don't know if we want to hear them first.
Sure.
I'm gonna call on folks. Sandy, you had your hand up first. Was your question answered?
No, I just wanted to say, and I don't want to volunteer her, but Rebecca's really good with helping if there is any need to change the wording on that. So just kind of volunteering her.
Thanks, Sandy. Next up, I'll go, with someone in the room. Did someone in the room have a hand up? Valerie?
I just think that the $175,000 is a lot to put in the Housing Task Force Fund. I know that in 2024, the select board allocated the $100,000 to the Housing Task Force Fund. And then
It's the trust fund.
it's the trust fund. And none of it was used. And then we allocated, I think,
Another
70,000.
75.
And it hasn't been used. I think the home improvement program has had low demand. And therefore, I think that you have maybe competing priorities. I would like to say that I've reviewed the Housing Task Force minutes from November, December, and January. On November, they talked a little bit about the home improvement fund, just to say that they needed to talk to the EFUD commissioners to figure out allocations and if they have to pay more for a separate water sewer system. December, there was nothing spoken about the home improvement program. And in January, there's nothing spoken about the home improvement program. And I haven't heard from the board any assignments to the Housing Task Force as a new projects. So I think having 175,000 sitting there is an awful lot of money. I would recommend this. And with a competing priority, I would say that the flood mitigation, I would say trumps future housing right now. You never know when we're gonna have another flood. We gave them 14,000 and we're giving the Housing Task Force 175. So I think that it's too much money and I would prefer thoughts about giving more money in reserve for flood mitigation, stormwater, culverts, grants, loans. And I also think it's something, if there's more money in the hazard mitigation fund, that if we use it, there's a better chance for us to get reimbursed. So I think the 175 is a little high to be sitting in a fund when there has been no interest in the current program. Thank you.
Thanks, Valerie. Next, I have Billy William Victor online.
Hi, everybody. First, I think this is a good idea to do this. I think with the amount of money we need to actually build enough houses to make a difference, the 175 may not even move the needle. But let me just ask another question, and it's more a semantics question, but when we talk about affordable housing, what is the board thinking of? And the reason why I raise that is because my personal opinion is what we really need here is workforce housing more than anything else. And if we go through the word affordable generally means 80% of AMI, which we need a lot less of here than we need for Waterbury. So I guess I'd look for some clarity as to what direction you would want to be able to use that money. Would it go to workforce or would it really go to affordable, meaning legal definitions of affordable?
I can
Thanks, Billy. Go ahead.
try to answer that. Since I've spearheaded a lot of this, Billy, I'll try my best to answer with how I've looked at the proposals that I've put before the board, whether having them had passed and failed, probably equal amounts. For affordable housing, it's the HUD definition, 30% of your income, in my mind. And though I despise the term workforce housing, I see where you're coming from, and I also would say that 30% of somebody's income could, is both affordable and workforce housing, as more working people will be able to afford to live in Waterbury, regardless of the name that we're putting on the style of housing that we're building. But I think we also need to take into account that building anything at a large scale, especially when it comes to rentals, is a way to level the climb of rents, or in a sense stabilize rents, as you're putting more on the market. Supply demand, super easy economics is the way I've looked at it thus far in my 3 years on the board.
Thanks, Kane. I know that Joe Camarada has his hand up next, who's the chair of our housing task force and has sent quite a lot of emails, in my experience, with a lot of feedback on this item. So, Joe, any comments you have are welcome.
I think I first want to address Billy's question, and I believe this is on the town website, although I couldn't find it very readily. But in the allowable uses for the Housing Trust Fund, there is already a definition of affordable housing. And that definition, Billy, is priced to individuals and families earning up to 120% of AMI. So we actually did address that when we put the allowable uses. But my question was, what does this change? Having this trust fund in a reserve fund, what does it change? What does it allow us to do differently? Does it restrict what we're doing in any way, or does it open up other possibilities?
Yes, so one, it restricts the allowable uses to the article. Not the policy per se, but the article itself. If the article has a specific reference to affordable housing, then that's the allowable use. In terms of other operational restrictions, the funds can be spent at the direction of a select board. They don't need voter input to spend the funds, just to create and fund the reserve. And that's something that we reaffirmed very recently with council. So these funds are essentially put in a lockbox for the use specified in the article, to be spent at the future direction of the select board. They certainly can go before the voters, but the select board will have the authority to spend these funds in the future.
So if I understood you correctly, that the allowable uses that were originally adopted then are now null and void. And then the definition as it stands here, or not here, but in the warning, would be then the new set of allowable uses. And then how that definition is interpreted is up to the select board.
I wouldn't say they're null and void, because as I understand it, the policy adopted has a definition of affordable. So I think as long as the select board is acting in good faith and being consistent with the language in the warning, I think there's a little bit of room for nuance there in terms of allowable uses and what constitutes housing initiatives and incentives. I think if the select board says we're going to build purely we're going to subsidize a housing development that's, I'll make a scenario up. If you're going to give $100,000 to a new housing development and only half of that is affordable, I think it'd be subject to a challenge. But I think if there's consistency within the use and it is affordable and that's really clear, I don't see any conflict there. Does that answer the question?
Right, but so just maybe if I could, so the affordable though, is kind of getting back to Billy's question now, the affordable as it's defined in policy, or the affordable as it is somehow later defined?
That's a fair question, and I think that level of nuance I'd want a legal opinion on.
Okay.
I think you and I probably agree on what affordable means, and I think probably the select board has a vision for what that means, but perhaps council would tell us that affordable should be a little more clearly defined to be consistent with the HUD definition.
I would argue that affordable is defined by the HUD definition. If there was a challenge to this article, it would be the HUD definition would be referred to.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
But I guess Joe's noting we adopted our own, I'm speaking as Alyssa Johnson, select board member, not chair, but we adopted our own program with a different definition from HUD. So I guess I'm just gonna my personal, I was the tie-breaking vote on this on the last thing, if we should bring it forward. I think getting voter approval on a reserve fund is really prudent. As we just did on our last item, I think it's incredibly important to have it clearly laid out what it's gonna be used for. And I personally did not have the capacity to do that, and I don't think we're looking at it tonight, so we can do it. But if it goes on the town meeting warning and is approved, we can't undo it. So I just, those are the stakes I'm aware of as we're having this conversation. Sandy has a hand up, and then Cheryl in the room.
Hi, yeah, so I just put on the chat, and I don't know if anybody can see it or not, but what I had proposed for an article was, shall the town of Waterbury vote to use, in this case, 175,000 of previously received local options tax funds to create a separate reserve to be known as the Housing Trust Fund. Said fund shall be used to support housing initiatives and incentives for Waterbury residents and homeowners as proposed by the Waterbury Housing Task Force and approved by the select board. That opens it up so that it's a lot more vague, and it doesn't just define it as affordable housing, but any kind of an initiative that the board comes, that the Housing Task Force comes up with and the board approves. I think that makes it easier to be able to, you know, right now we've got the what we agreed on for uses for the fund, and I think this states that that is something that's allowed. I mean, it really opens it up to be kind of a neutral.
Tom has his hand up, and then Cheryl.
So if I may, Sandy, I appreciate that, but I really strongly oppose that language. State law is really clear. The select board controls the purse strings. The manager does too, but only if approved by the voters that there is a manager and at the direction of the select board. So giving language that says the select board or manager cannot act unless a volunteer board appointed by the select board, and that board does not need to exist, first says these are your options, I think is taking too much authority away from the select board.
But this says,
Obviously,
sorry.
so when I read this, it says that if the housing task force does not propose it, the select board cannot act on it, and I think that is usurping their authority.
Cheryl and then Chris.
So I agree with what Sandy was saying. There is a nuance between workforce housing and affordable housing. In my research, workforce housing is people who don't meet the standards to get the benefits of participating in affordable housing. And there are people that are working, but don't make enough to actually, they're in the middle. They can't get that HUD affordable housing limit, and they can't afford to buy their own home. So there is a nuance between those two narratives. If we limit it to affordable housing, then we are limiting the way that we could use it if we do move towards more of a workforce housing and or a hybrid thing. So I would just want to say there is a difference between those two terms in my research, and it's a big difference. So if we want to limit it, I'd be careful. Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl. Chris was next, and then I see Tom in the room.
Yeah, I'll try not to take too much time here. So the two catches for me are the words initiative and incentives. Those terms seem broad brush for me. The only backstop is the fact that the select board has the right to approve whatever ideas are brought forward and deemed necessary. So I don't know how that can be better defined. And my bigger question is, how does this align with our new town plan that's coming out? Has anybody looked at that yet to see if there's any wording in there that either can define this a little clearer or perhaps
Are you reading
flies in the face of.
Are you reading off of my suggestion?
Yeah, flies in the face of the wording that's here. So I'm just wondering if the town plan could help in drafting something that is, you know, more in line with that and maybe more defined as well.
Cory has the hand up, go ahead.
Sorry, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have a document that we already reviewed that says what we would like this fund to be used for, right? It was like a,
Well, there's already a fund, now, or the trust, and now there's the reserve, but yes, there is a document that lists the allowable uses for the trust that we passed some time ago.
so why don't we take the language that's in the proposed warning article and just insert as defined in whatever the title of that document is.
I'll accept that.
I think you're then referencing referencing a document that select board policy, which can be changed by a future select board.
Not if it's part of the reserve fund. My understanding is that if we make this reserve fund, then the reserve fund can only be used for the uses that are outlined in this warning article. And if we say that it's outlined in that policy that is dated blah, 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 then it would go to that document, insert date to like really hammer home that it is only that version that the voters have approved the use for. Kind of thing.
So Tom is next in the audience. I guess the other thing I will offer is, again, what we did tonight is say, we're asking voters to come up with a natural reserve fund. We should have a policy that we could put in our town report. So on town meeting day, when someone stands up and says, what, how can this be used? We can say, the select board adopted a policy at its special meeting on January 27th, printed on page 50 that would govern the use of the fund. So we could adopt a specific policy at a future meeting. I will say, in terms of hard deadlines, we need to issue a town meeting warning before February 1st. So if we don't sign it tonight, we're gonna need to have another special meeting later this week to finalize the warning for town meeting so that we get a legal warning for town meeting. So those are immovable statute deadlines for us to consider. Tom?
Yeah, you absolutely summarized what, again, some of this dialogue goes round and round, and I think you have to ground it back to something we used to always say, which is what problem are we trying to solve right now? Right, so right now, we're trying to solve something that Sandy brought up many meetings ago, I believe, which was you should establish a reserve so that if this funding is not used, it can be put back in that bucket. So that's what this article actually does, right? So I think we get a little bit confused. And I agree with you, Mr. Likes, that it is the select board's purview. A task force, if they're successful, will be dissolved. Will be dissolved. That's the purpose of the task force. So I would encourage you all to look at what New Hampshire is doing, because they're somehow doing a lot better than Vermont right now in housing. So interesting article today. So I would submit that your article should be very simple. It's about the reserve. When you throw in, I believe anyway, right? We throw in 175,000, you're tied to what's in there now, but say 3 weeks from now, the Waterbury, what's it called? The BHIP equivalent for Waterbury. Provides $33,000, $40,000 to not saying it's gonna happen, but it could, right? It's live. Then it's no longer 175,000. Are you tying your hands now to a number that you have to replenish every year? Or is this that money which is not used will be put in a reserve fund? Is that all the purpose of it? I'm literally asking.
The money not used stays in that reserve fund.
Yeah.
Doesn't obligate you to replenish it.
So how would you make that article sound that easy?
I think it's the statute says. Sorry.
So can I take the moment to
Yeah.
say, it's 7:40 PM, and since we're talking about it, if amenable to you, Kate, let's transition to reviewing the draft annual town meeting warning on which there is proposed language. We can continue this discussion. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Does anyone have other comments they want to raise now about this housing portion? But it seems like we're moving towards that. So I will just say at 7:41, we're now moving to review and consider approving town meeting warning. I gave my speech earlier, which was just saying this has to be done by February 1. So if we don't finalize something for us to take draft off of and sign with Carol Dawes tomorrow, we'll need to have another special meeting. Most of this is language that has been used in prior years. You'll note that the first, so we have electing an article, or moderator, excuse me. I will say Tom, Rebecca, Ellis, and I met to go through this draft. We also had the town attorney on the phone. He then followed up with, so we've gotten reviews of this, and I'll let Tom talk through pieces of it. You'll note that there's the language about the bond vote, which is Australian ballot. So I'm gonna start us at Article 5. So we have acting on reports, claims of officers. We have the property tax dates. Tom reviewed these with staff, correct, Tom?
Correct.
So the office staff is aware of the dates and comfortable with them. We have the 4:30 PM deadline. We had extended it last year. Then we have the budget. Tom, can I let you speak to how we arrived at the drafted Article 9?
Yeah, so Article 9 is different than prior years. And I made a misstatement at a prior meeting that Rebecca loved capital as a separate article. So we had a really fun conversation, myself and Alyssa and Rebecca, with our attorney on the phone, and he suggested everything in one article. And so the dollar amounts in Article 9 reflect the amounts in the budget and including and outlining the transfers to the capital funds. To show those totals, so it's a little different than prior years. And the challenge you have is, if you're discussing a tax rate, which at least we've done for the last few years, you've got to include the transfers to the capital fund. And so it's an oddity to have one article which discusses a budget and a tax rate, another article that could impact that tax rate. So the totals for Article 9 include all the transfers to the capital fund. What they do not include is anything. They don't include a bunch of local option tax items, and they don't include articles 15 through the end, which are all the agencies that have requested funding, because again, when you're voting on those are paid for by taxes. So you're voting to increase your taxes by giving $1,000 to Cast on Community Action, for example. So that was the logic, as discussed through a number of iterations with Rebecca and the council. And I think that makes sense. The other piece that council has advised us on, and it's not at least our recent history here, but his suggestion was, don't include the estimated tax rate in the budget. And just talk about it, but I think we've done it the last few years, so we're not suggesting to change tradition. But he said that Waterbury is a bit of an oddity in that regard. In most places, you just vote on spending and then the tax rate is obviously part of the conversation, but not in the article itself. It is an estimated figure in the article, so it can be adjusted by the select board, and it commonly is.
Thanks, Tom. The board members have questions or comments on Article 9, questions for Tom, questions about how we arrived at this. Okay.
So just clarifying, this is a combination of two articles that we usually would have had, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
So if you look at the highway budget, that 1981920 will includes the capital transfers. In some prior years, it would have not included it, and that would have been a different article.
Okay.
So it's a different way of structuring it, but one that Rebecca seemed to favor. She's done a lot of research on this and done a moderator training where they discuss this, and something that council seemed to favor. Right.
Other questions or comments from the board, Roger?
Yeah, I personally agree with you, Tom. I like having the estimated tax rate in there, even though it's not fixed. It's in some ways a bit more transparent and easier to understand for the voters. And I just wanted to check and make sure that Rebecca and the protocols of the moderators are accepting of that.
Yes, we've done some emails. The other piece I'd say is. In prior years. The motion did not match the article language exactly. It was a bit more expansive to more or less explain the two article. And in 2026, your motion can essentially be to read the article. So I think it's a bit easier from that perspective.
Is it possible to read the article since all this?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. The Article 9 that we're discussing is,
Want to bring it on the screen, Sharon?
oh, yeah, sure. Poor Cheryl has to, yeah, you should
Yeah,
screen share Tom as a guest in the meeting. It is posted online and we can grab some more. Are we on copies? It has a lot of numbers, so if we're okay with the screen, I think that will be easier. I'll let
Ask you a quick question.
pull it up. Go ahead, Chris.
We currently at 54.5 cents,
55 and a half.
55. And
Roughly.
would it be ridiculous to ask to say in the article, propose 57 up from 55.5 or 5 here, or that?
I will say in past years, we've had that information in the town report saying what the previous year tax rate was. And I will just say for the record, this is Tom, I'm making eye contact at 2.7%
Yes.
increase. So this estimated tax rate is a 2.7% increase, subject to the revisions we did at our last meeting. And I will just note that the other important, you gotta go way plus bigger if you can. Even more, great.
More?
Yeah, we love more. Okay, so we're discussing Article 9 right now, which is in mega giant text on the screen. Thank you, everyone. Does someone want to read it? I'm talking a lot. Mike, go ahead.
I was just gonna make a comment. I do like the way this article is now framed. I've kind of been one where before, I think it was a little bit disjointed, and I think this makes it a lot clearer to the taxpayer and the voter as to what's happening. It makes it very apparent. I do think, I understand Chris's comment, you know, we want to be as transparent as possible to make whatever increases, but I think that narrative can be shown in the select board's report and something, you know, unfortunately, a knowledgeable, you know, town resident, you know, will be reading those reports. The words are not going to.
Do you want me to?
Would we like to read it out loud?
I can.
Okay, go for it.
Go for it. Article 9, shall the voters approve a total of $3,857,386 in general expenses and related transfers for capital expenses, $1,981,920 in highway and related transfers for capital expenses, $653,040 in library expenses, and $65,140 in cemetery expenses, and $478,000 in capital expenses, of which $478,000 is funded through a general fund transfer, and $5,000 is funded from non-property tax revenues. The totality of general and capital fund expenses will require $4,585,774 to be raised by property taxes and $1,971,712 from other non-property tax revenues, with an estimated tax rate of 0.57 per $100 of assessed value, subject to change as may be approved by the voters in subsequent articles.
Thanks, Roger. And I'm just noting we are not there yet, but we have later articles pertaining to local option tax. So just saying that out loud, that is the only piece not included in this. Other board questions about this? Evan had his hand up a while ago. Thanks for waiting.
It seems like there's a typo in the capital expenses part, 478,000, it's listed twice. Yeah, it's like the second one should be 473,000.
Nope, because there's $478,000 that's a transfer to the capital fund, but within the fund, there's a $5,000 revenue in the highway fund from the sale of equipment. So this was part of the debate we had, was how to depict this in a way. The idea was that someone who's a bit of a layperson can go through the budget with a calculator and have the numbers make easy and rational sense. So it looks a bit odd, but we're saying capital funds get 478 grand in revenue from the general fund, and embedded in one of those funds, there's also another revenue from the sale of some equipment.
So it's in addition to the 478.
So it looks,
Something in the capital fund, you start with. Then up to $5,000 in the capital fund.
Correct. Correct.
it just looks to me like you're spending. Like you have, you spending that extra $5,000 somewhere that's not like included in the total. That's just how it reads to me.
Yeah, it's included in the totals. But yeah, it's a bit of an awkward article. We've got 3 or 4 semicolons on there. I'll grant you that.
Yeah.
I think it's.
Sorry, I'm kind of without, it looks like 478 in capital expenses, of which 478 is funded this way and 5 is funded this way.
So the.
So it kind of looks like adding 478 and 5. Is that what?
Yeah.
So the 5 is different though. The 478 is taxes, the 5 is non-taxes. And the fund is running a small surplus with that math of $5,000. But the concept was again to show the total of tax and non-tax revenues and to make it transparent. So it's a bit of a odd thing to understand. I'll admit that, but I think no matter how you write it, it gets a little bit wonky. And your capital funds can run a surplus. In fact, it's not uncommon to appropriate money into the funds for that purpose, just like the natural disaster reserve or a housing trust.
So wait, we have capital expenses of 502 or this was like
478.
We're essentially funding them in full through raising taxes, yes, but there's this additional 5,000 that you're acknowledging that we
Yes.
are raising, not accounting for it and asking for the 473.
Yeah.
Cheryl had a comma edit that might help us. What is it?
Commas are your friends sometimes.
Commas are our friends sometimes. Do you want to say it out
So,
loud?
yeah, so, after general fund transfer, comma, and 5,000 funded from non-property tax revenues. Like, take out the is and add a comma. Because those are 2 separate clauses.
Okay.
They're independent clauses. They should be separated by a comma.
I will take the professors.
Right. Professor Cheryl.
Do we have this
The
reflected
other-
for the minutes and edits if we're considering it? I just need to know where the is in the comment is. For when we're trying to redo this tomorrow.
Right, so if I can, it would be, and 478,000 in capital expenses, of which 478,000 is funded through the general fund transfer, comma. And 5,000 funded from non-property tax revenues. Is that clear?
I think. Yes.
Alright,
And
we're adding a comma.
And the conversation with Rebecca and Jim, just to be clear. So there's a couple real key points. One is people should never vote on something twice. Which I think is obvious. You don't want people approving something and then contradicting themselves and then what happens. But the second point that was decided at that meeting, and this is just visual, but the way the budget would be shown in the town report is that there's an awful lot of local option tax items that are capital related. Those are gonna be in the annual report and on the warning, but they won't be shown in the budget. Because they're not being approved as part of the budget vote, they're being approved as a separate article. So if you look at just the budget, it'll be a little more stripped down from that perspective. Because I think the point was, people are generally voting on the article and what's in the budget, but you're showing things twice. So don't even show things twice and have the local option tax as a separate article. The actuals will show what's voter approved. If that makes sense. So the budget, I think, will be a little bit easier to read from that perspective.
With that, I'm gonna say, shall we flip the page to continue, or is there any other questions or comments? Evan,
I just wanted to suggest bullet points for put general expenses, highway, library, cemetery, each on its own separate line, just for clarity.
Thank you for your suggestion.
I appreciate this was reviewed with the attorney. My question is about talking about the, will require 4.5 million to be raised by property taxes. I get that. I'm not sure about and 1.971 million from other non-property tax revenues. I understand that you have a budget for non-property tax revenues, but the town isn't raising those non-property tax revenues. They are coming to the town. There's marriage licenses, there's zoning fees, there's pilot payments, there's current use payments. And my concern is that if you're saying that you're raising $1.9 million in these non-property tax revenues, and something happens in the legislature that, oh, we're gonna, we've got our own budget problems and we're gonna reduce the pilot payment, or we're gonna reduce this. That information may spur the town manager to talk to the select board to say, we're gonna have a deficit. But this almost seems as if you're saying we have some control over those revenues, and I don't like that in there. I'm not a lawyer, however, so this is my comment.
Are you suggesting a word like supported for the second part of that?
Or anticipated received?
Yeah, you could say, and anticipated 1.971712 anticipated from non-property tax revenues to be filed.
It's a good point. Thank you.
Is the board amenable to that adjustment to add anticipated? Yes. All right, continuing on our article journey. All right, flipping the page, Tom, since you're already screen sharing, would you scroll down to the next page? Highlight pulled over from our last meeting. So here we have the language TM for creating a reserve fund as approved by the attorney for the Natural Disaster Reserve Fund. Short and dry, and then the 14,000 we've talked about. Does anyone have questions or comments on articles 10 or 11 as drafted?
Yeah, I feel like we discussed them in detail. Those seem fine.
Okay, so now we're back to, as was affectionately called, Ghost Article 12 and Ghost Article 12A. Pasted in by yours truly, which was an attempt at taking the document Kane had provided, cribbing from Article 10 and getting something we could consider. So we've come full circle. We did a little detour with the full budget, and we're back to our conversation about what, if anything, we want to do about this housing reserve. And then we'll continue because there's more to the warning. Kane.
I have some ideas. So, as previously stated, we have an approved document that shows what allowable uses are. We could reapprove those in light of this article, or ahead of the hopeful passage of this article, to cement what the allowable uses are post town meeting day.
I like this idea.
Or you can be inserted. That'd be a lot of words to
Well,
be inserted into that article.
and to Liz's point, we're gonna insert in the allowable uses in the town meeting report for the natural disaster reserve fund, so we could do the same thing for this housing trust.
Well, let's just know,
Housing reserve.
I used housing reserve fund because that was the language. I will name that, like, what on earth we want to call it is up for debate.
Alright.
I
I
was
think-
cribbing from.
You could call it Greg as long as it gets in the
I think
town
reserve
meeting.
fund is right, I'm just used to sending trust.
Or the housing trust reserve fund, just to be fun with it.
It's just dealer's choice.
Mike?
I agree with King. I think you could do it in a very simple way. You know, just adding, to be called the Waterbury Housing Reserve Fund for the, and have state that as per the reserve fund rules that have been previously established. I think that would get what we want to do without making this thing very cumbersome. You know, because we're just citing something back and something will be said in the town report, you know, that further describes this.
Does someone have the document? I'll just name, like, I'm the select board chair and I'm on the housing trust fund, and I just want to make sure we read that document and it's gonna serve the needs that we have for this. Joe, I'm sorry, you asked, do I even need to come to this meeting? And I said, up to you, but if you have it, we'll take it. Otherwise, I can't run a meeting and search for it myself.
It's.
I mean, yes, I do
I
have it.
can't find it right now.
Joe has it. Thanks, Joe. You're the
Perfect.
best.
What do you,
Can we let Joe screen share so we can at least look at this for the purposes of grounding this conversation and what's been adopted? Okay, I think we're gonna give you the power, Joe. Thanks for being here.
give me
Give
this?
me just a second. I think if I make you co-host. All right, you should be able to share away, my friend.
I'll try. This has always been an adventure for me. Can you see it?
It's happening, yes. Once again, if you can make it mega zoomed in, that would be phenomenal.
Absolutely. Oops. I did a little bit bigger.
Can you X out the sidebar on the left?
Sure, Terry.
Give yourself
Oh,
the screen
Is
space.
that me?
No.
Okay, maybe one more plus, Joe. I have great eyesight, but speaking for the room.
I don't.
Yeah, maybe one more.
I need senior font.
Yeah.
Senior font.
That good?
Yes,
Perfect.
thank you. I would also note, Joe, do we have the location where this is posted on the town website?
I had found it, I thought I found it there once before, but when I was looking just now, I didn't. So this is off my direct.
Okay.
But okay,
Thank you.
so the first part of this is just the background. Okay, how we got to this point. And this part is where we define affordable housing. And I think to the person in the room, I don't remember who it was who made the comment about, affordable and what we call workforce. We actually addressed that here. We said this should target individuals who earn too much to qualify for traditional subsidized housing, but not enough to compete in the high cost housing market. So that concern that she had, that's exactly what we were targeting here. Okay, can I go?
Yes, thank you.
All right, then this is where we got into the allowable uses. And it really was just kind of two things. They said it could be programmatic, and the programs could come from anywhere, right? But like we launched with the Waterbury Housing Improvement, and this is why Tom's point was so important earlier, it could be at the discretion of the town manager for individual, it could be opportunistic. So if the town manager needed money to support the Woody Avenue project or Stanley Wasson or so, the trust fund could be there to do that too. Um, that's all there is.
Thank you very much, Joe. Especially for the last minute, on the spot, saving the day screen sharing moment. Questions or comments from the board? Can you scroll back up, Joe, so we can at least, or just say the title of that document?
This document is called the Waterbury Housing Trust Fund Allowable Uses.
Thank you. Okay, so we've now seen the document. Mike?
I think, as I said before, I think if we just reference that document in the warning, I think that will meet the test. I also want to address one other item. I know a few people have addressed the high dollar amount compared to the natural resource. I know, having over 40 years of experience in the housing world, housing projects very expensive. You know, not to say that natural resource recovery is not expensive, but let's hope that have natural resource recovery. But I think we will, in the next 50 years, have to deal with this housing programs. And without having significant reserve funds, large scale projects where we may be, supplemental funds may not happen. And I think that's the importance of, having a vibrant housing trust fund is really critical for our community. We're not going to get away in the next few years from the housing crisis. And this is the way that we're at least starting to, meet our obligation to try to house people in our community, whether you call it affordable or workforce. I think they're two kind of innocuous. I think they're very similar. And I hate to get involved in semantics between affordable and workforce housing. I think the 120% of median clearly defines what we want.
Okay, so, with the note of making bad analogies, we had a ghost of an article. We're putting some flesh on the bones. I'd encourage us to move towards some language so we can move towards considering if we can adopt this entire warning. So we have Ghost Article 12. In light of this conversation, how are we proposing to change or modify the language in Ghost Article 12? Tori?
You put it back up.
Oh, yes, Tom, thank you.
All right, I propose, thank you all for everybody's input and everything. I retract my earlier suggestion. I propose we move forward with this language that was drafted by our moderator and our town attorney and approved by them. I think it mirrors the Natural Disaster Reserve Fund language. I think it meets the requirements, and I think if we can also adopt the allowable uses policy, just like we just proposed for the Natural Disaster Fund, that would resolve 98% of the issue. So I think that's good enough.
Okay, and I'm just saying in full disclosure, the ghost was not present when we got the legal review. It's copied from Article 10, so we can get a bonus legal review before we sign it. But I'm saying in transparency, it's formulated off of that. This language was not there.
All right, can I modify real quick then?
Yeah, please.
I would like to move forward with this subject to wonderful legal review, and if they say it's good, I'm good.
Okay.
I was just gonna, before Tori added that second part, was going to agree and say, do we need a motion to reaffirm the allowable uses?
I would say yes.
Yes, and we can do that both now and at a future meeting. My question is if we're putting them in the language of the article.
Yeah.
I would say we don't have to, but I'm not a lawyer.
Do board members have other questions on this? I see hands from Chris and Bill, and again, we're on Article Ghost 12 of 25, so please go ahead.
Does it help to reference the, what's that? Reference the, criteria. In this article to whatever page in the counter report.
Yeah, I was wondering about pursuits of housing afforded to support goals of affordable housing. And I, instead of for residents, both current and future, I was gonna say, as outlined in the Housing Trust Fund allowable uses.
That works, yeah,
But
Right.
yeah.
just for clarity,
Page such and such.
and then I'm gonna personally say we don't put page numbers, but we could have that available in the town report, and the person making that motion could speak to it in their speaking to the motion. Bill, your next one.
Yeah, Alyssa, maybe instead of saying as outlined, you might want to say as established in. That's more definitive. And then the only comment I had is in that second line, I think, Cheryl, I'm right, there's one too many ofs for the purpose of supporting housing initiatives.
Yeah. Yep, delete the second one.
Okay, great. And then we get to Ghost Article 12A and the number we might want to allocate to this fund, assuming voters agree to create it in the previous article. Discussion. King,
I'm gonna argue for the full amount that is currently sitting in the trust.
agreed. Any other discussion from board members? Tom, any comment?
I think $75,000 was voter approved last year. I think going backwards to the additional $100,000 is conversation you should have with some caution. It's a significant amount. There's been probably now a year and a half backlash related to that. I think if you're going to do that, you might want to specify that, at least in your writing, perhaps not in the article, that the select board had allocated the first 100,000, not the residents of the town. Just think it's a pretty significant amount. I'd also would caution you because unless Joe corrects me, I don't believe there's been any formal applicants to the WIT program yet. And if there are, there's a lot of time to get to the finish line where funding is provided. One,
There will be, there will be one. I spoke with one on the phone today.
so that's great. But you're quite a long time from spending any money on that program, even if that one goes through pretty quickly. So you might want to consider limiting it to the 75, and then future funding is a matter for future discussion.
We're gonna have to. I made you full host. My computer's gonna die if I don't plug it in.
Okay. Everyone's
sorry.
going to pause for a moment while we do a
Brief pause
technology.
for a tech swap.
And if someone wants a floor motion for an owl and microphones.
For computers that will handle all the necessary cords.
This thing.
That's me, 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 that's me. Oh my God.
Are you good?
Sorry. I don't see where it's coming from. I don't see where it's coming from.
My audio is
Why don't you just read stuff? Why don't you just?
Oh, sure.
Right.
I'd like to rescind one.
Got it. I can't find my mouse when it screen shows like
Tom, you
this.
should be able to put your audio and video back on without
No, it's not.
complicating our lives.
Okay,
Audio.
Video. All right.
Okay, this should be the owl. Hi, everyone, welcome back. Are we
Yes,
still
sorry about that.
recording? You've now enjoyed the technology transfer as if we needed that all break. Amidst review of the draft. I think we're back and we're hopefully functioning, which means we were on Ghost Article 12A and the amount of funding to be allocated to the Housing Trust Fund. And Bill Sheplik came up to sit at the table during all of this. Thanks, Bill. Floor is yours.
I'll yield to Kane right now because I think you wanted to say
Okay,
something.
go ahead,
responsive,
Kane.
Tom.
I did. So at the time that we allocated that $100,000, it was referred to quote unquote as free money. And was subsequently put into a trust fund that was multiple meetings worth of discussion before we even got to consideration, and then another few meetings before a motion. So the amount of grueling work it took to get the 100,000 into the trust fund alone would be argument enough to leave it in there. Secondly, sure, there has been pushback, but that money was not accounted, the money that we received from the first batch of local option tax funds was not allocated into the existing budget because we didn't know we were going to get it. So though there has been pushback, I would call it a minority pushback. The money that was allocated was not secret, as we had meeting after meeting after meeting about it and what we do with the money that's coming in and how we spend it and what reserves and funds and budget items we put it in. So I'm going to go ahead and reaffirm my previous statement as leaving all 175,000 to be moved into the reserve fund.
Okay, Bill, go ahead.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
I'm trying.
Share
I screen shared, it's not,
I keep seeing it come up there.
it. Oh, yeah, just say share.
that's what I'm doing.
Oh.
Could you maybe go to the view?
That's what's confusing. Or just stop sharing.
Spooky,
Oh,
the ghost article.
If you
Yeah.
just click on it, will
There we go, all right.
The magic touch, okay. And you should be able to drag the videos out of the way so people can read it. Go ahead.
So I didn't take pen to paper, but I think you could say, maybe this splits the baby, so to speak, and gets everybody what they're wanting, but you can say, shall the town allocate $75,000 into the housing, shall the town allocate $75,000 previously allocated by the voters at the 2025 town meeting, or previously allocated at the 2025 town meeting. And then, in addition, allocate $100,000 of unused local option tax money into the Waterbury Housing Reserve. And when you make the motion to do that, and somebody asks the question, you can just say, well, we, the select board, allocated the first $100,000 in 2024, 2023, whenever it was. And now we're trying to, this is a housekeeping measure to actually get it into a reserve fund where it can stay so that we can use it for the purposes that we did in the Ghost Article 12 per month. So I think you should be transparent. Say, you, the voters, allocated 75 last year, we want you to reallocate that, or, actually put it into the housing reserve, and we want you to put the $100,000 already there. So that's my first comment.
Excellent. Does any board member want to make a motion to adopt the Shepelek proposal for wording? Because I would have made it, but I'm.
So moved. Accept it, the distinguished Shepard amendment.
Second, by Kane, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we'll go with your proposal in language, thank you, Beth.
And then to the discussion that you were having about, replenishing the fund or anything else. I think what you need to do in the future is, so if this passes, you'll have $175,000 in the housing trust fund. And then you can use it for the things that have been established in that article before it. And as it dwindles, because you're using it, at some future point, the select board can go back to the voters and say, we would like your permission to put an additional $50,000 of local option tax money that we received this year into the housing trust fund. Or if there's some grant from some outside agency that comes in, we've received it, here it is, it's in our undesignated fund balance, and we'd like to put that $50,000 or whatever it is. So it's not necessarily just replenishing the 175, it's deciding in future to put more assets into that fund. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Does the board feel comfortable moving forward with the proposal? So noting that we would include the amount of funding, but specify $75,000 approved by voters at 2025 town meeting and $100,000 from local option tax reserves. So we all feel comfortable.
That now be Article 13.
Yes, note that the numbering will always be updated. And once we get through this whole document, we can decide if we have enough clarity to do these changes and sign it tomorrow, or want to call a special meeting. Moving on, article listed as 13. This is specifically the one for the fire truck that we approved, that we're paying for with local option tax, and because it requires borrowing, it's all this language. Tom, is there anything else? And can you just scroll down on the screen so people can see it?
Yes. So a couple of notes, the 414,407 is the cost of the truck. That would be the principal amount that's approved for borrowing. The $110,000 in local option taxes is in there because this may exceed our ability to borrow. This will exceed our ability to simply finance this internally. So I'm anticipating a bank loan. So that would pay the principal plus some interest. Also note there's typical language about state and federal grants that may come, but also note it says and reserve funds. There is a fire capital reserve fund, which has a few $100,000 in it. And so the article specifies the debt is serviced by the local option tax in 2026. It does not specify future years because you may be able to pull from your fire reserve. And note that in the capital plan, which we've reviewed over the summer and Gary Dillon talked about, this is the last real big expense I think Gary put during his tenure and for a long time. There's one other, I don't want to call it a small expense, but the command vehicle is an older vehicle that they want to replace. And that, by the time you put equipment on it, is low six figures. So it may be that you would use a combination of ways to fund this in future years, but that can be determined in future years. So the typical language about state and federal grants made in reserve funds, I think, is prescient here because you'll have some cards to play in 2027 and beyond.
Board questions or comments on Article 13? Okay, seeing none, one from the public, Phil.
So my question is, why isn't there a period after the 414,407 that's in parentheses? And why aren't the words after that deleted? I don't understand what the debt service in 2026 is going to be. You're going to borrow the money from the bank in 2026. we get $414,000 minus whatever it is, but let's just say there's no minus. You borrow $414,000 and 26 from the Northfield Savings Bank, you put it in your bank account, you buy the fire truck. I think the first debt service payment is in 2027, so why are we saying we're financing the debt service of 2026?
May not be in 2027. The truck is essentially ready to roll once it's approved by the voters. And so the debt can be structured however folks at the time want it to be structured, but there could be a debt service payment the next month.
Okay.
All right, any other questions on 13? All right, so Article 14, you'll see there's two options. I'm gonna say for public record and whoever's in this seat next year doing this, again, the recommendation was you should just do one budget item that has everything we looked at in Article 9 and local option tax should be in it. And I said, I think the select board and residents feel strongly that they want to see local option tax separate. So we went this year from 3 votes, from doing the budget and then capital expenses and LOT to 2. So we cut it down for future select board consideration. You put local option tax just in the budget. It's available in the town report for everyone else. Assuming this board doesn't want to do that, we have 2 options. So one, we can do option A, which is like a 1 sentence. It's the 435,000. If folks are looking online, we have a printout of 2026 local option tax. Some of it is already covered in other items. So things like the debt payoff is in the budget and the natural disaster reserve fund is its own article. And we just talked about the fire truck, but everything else in there that isn't covered is for this item. Option B, if Tom wants to scroll, is essentially just to list every single thing. I will say our town moderator does not like option B because the floor motion will be to read this bulleted list.
3 times.
So the moderator would prefer something in option A, but I am presenting both to the select board for discussion.
I have a question. Hypothetically, we went with option B, and then somebody go through the floor to take out sidewalk.
Yes, and I think that's the case even with option A. I will name it, kind of has to do with your familiarity and comfort. So, Bill Shepelek could stand up sorry, Bill, I think it's fair to pick on you for this one. Yeah, he made a floor motion last year. Could stand up and say, I move to strike line XYZ from the full budget and not pave sidewalks. He would never do that on Article 9, or even if we just said to approve the 935. Clearly, by doing option B, you're making it much more legible for everyone in the thing itself versus in the town report. But as far as I'm aware, the legal ability to modify a line item in the full budget or this item is the same. Tom, does that sound right to you? It just says, it says to appropriate 935,000 from local option tax revenues as outlined. This does say town report, it doesn't have a page number. I see Kane, then Mike.
Mike's hand was up first.
Okay, Mike, then Kane.
As much as I respect our esteemed moderator, I'm much more in favor of option B. It's much more transparent. I think that's what the voters want to see. If they want to strike something, they have something. If someone really wants to strike something, they're going to do the research on the $935,000 and they'll still strike that amount. So I just like option B just for pure transparency.
Okay, Kane.
I'm on the other end of the fence here. I'm gonna vie for option A, as everyone is going to have a report in their hand, which will list all of these things.
All right.
I'm with Mike on this. I feel like we've seen and heard a lot of opinions, and as much as I hate to do this to the moderator, I think I'm gonna go option B, but I would like the total 935 to be kind of like worded into that first sentence of option. Suggest that language.
Other questions or comments from the board, Roger?
In respect for our town moderator's request, I'm going to go for option A.
Oh, good. Does this mean this is a vote again? I will say I deeply respect our moderator as the person who had to try and carefully explain which items were included elsewhere for other reasons. I may side with team option B just because I think it's actually more straightforward to have everything listed than to try and explain why we already voted on the debt in the budget and things like that. So noting that we're gonna have to tweak the wording. This was me copying and pasting from Tom's table. But there are other questions or comments on this? Yep, Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna be too verbose, I guess, but I mean, we just spent a lot of time talking about the allocation of local option tax for housing because something like this was not necessarily as transparent. I think this would prevent you from going down a bit of a rabbit hole town meeting if you just, because 935,000 is a lot more than all those other articles for the not-for-profits asking, right? And we spell that all out. So respectfully to the moderator, you have to kind of list those as well. So I would, again, no, I'm not a voting member, but to me, this kind of allocates what you as a select board has through countless meetings, done the hard work and labor to say, this is how we're spending your money. Because that's what this really becomes, right? So just saying 935,000, I would probably be one of the people on option A to say something. Can we further outline what that is? And then you'd end up explaining it anyways.
For clarification, the same list would be in the town report,
I understand.
but we, I'm sorry. The difference would just be that we're not forcing the moderator to read through this list 3 times. And these meetings do get long. I just feel like it's gonna become burdensome, not only on her, but also on the people having to listen to these, these figures being read through 3 times. And the exercise of going through them can be done just by asking people to turn to the correct page in the report. But if I'm outvoted, I'm outvoted. Ready to move on.
Other comments from folks on the board? Making me feel bad, Roger. So maybe I'll say, if we do this, I will volunteer to make the motion on town meeting day so that we have it. That any other board members have questions or comments? And I will just note with regards, the housing trust fund money was approved in a bulleted list, just like this last year at town meeting for the $75,000. Any other items? The board is comfortable with a bulleted list. I will apologize to Rebecca Ellis, and we will add the total of 935,000 in the motion. Is there other questions on this? All right, Article 15, we previously reviewed. It's alphabetically, all amounts requested up to $1,000. I moved the 975 from Mosaic into it. At our last meeting oh, I'm sorry, did you have a minute?
No, we were commiserating as they made 2 no votes on that.
Okay, so Articles 15 through 24. One of you perhaps can work with Rebecca to craft the wording next year and you get to make all the decisions. So Articles 15 through 24, at our last meeting, we voted to have these decreasing by amount of funding. I will say Carol Dawes, our contracted election clerk, well-respected in the state of Vermont, said that is not best practice. You should do it alphabetically. It would be internally inconsistent to do it otherwise, since the clumped article is in alphabetical and it can be seen as providing undue sway. So these are in alphabetical order, not in descending order of amount of requests. So I'm just saying that to the board, and that's the rationale. That brings us to the end of the warning, noting that we've outlined tonight a number of changes. Do we want to summarize those and then move to approve it? We would need a final version edited, run by legal, and then signed by the board. Do folks have questions, comments, proposals on that plan? Okay.
Yeah, let's just review changes for tonight, and then would you wanted to vote on it? And we get to signing tomorrow. I like that. Just reviewing our changes.
I hate to say it, but I think there's been a fair amount of conversation, and I think there could even be a little bit more when you decide on some of the final wording, so I'm recommending a special meeting to.
Okay, summarizing, we had the Article 9, the comma, the note about anticipated non-property tax revenue. Article 12 is becoming real, and it's noting that it's for the goals of affordable housing as established in the Housing Trust Fund rules. The allocation will be for $75,000 approved by voters at 2025 town meeting and $100,000 of local option tax reserves. For article what will become 13, we will update the article. I have been the horrible tiebreaker on article 14, so since we have to have a special meeting, maybe I'll change my mind. That's the rest of it. Any other notes? All right, noting that we'll need to schedule a special meeting to do a review of the final thing and sign, and that will need to happen this week. Is there any other notes to on this review and consider approving town meeting warning agenda? All right, thank you, everyone. I know that was a lot, and we made a lot of progress. Tom, I think you can stop your screen share. My only other discuss town report and other town meeting day considerations. I'm just noting that we've alluded to multiple times the town report. All of the other organizations have already had to submit their town reports. The select board and managers and interim managers have special dispensation, but it needs to be done by Monday. So I will draft something on behalf of the select board for the board to review. These trust fund things can also be included. I'm also noting that once we finalize the warning, we will need to do the work of assigning which board member will make motions, which doesn't have to be just needs to be prior to town meeting. Is there any other town report or other town meeting day things? Have confirmed we'll have lunch from the senior center for town meeting. Thank you to Beth Jones, our clerk, who helped finalize that. Any other notes? All right.
Is it going to be X fee or by donation?
I believe last year the town paid the base fee and the senior center accepted donations. I will note last year we had childcare, so I will reach out to see if that's possible again. I believe the children's room did it, and I think it's great to offer if we can. All right, that will bring us to our 8:05 agenda item, update on current and potential flood mitigation projects and grants, including Randall Meadow bond vote, and I will turn this over to Tom. We have a bunch of materials, and Dana Allen is also here, and we have
So we're working through for both the Randall Meadow project and the Woody Avenue project some of the requirements for the grant. So in the packet, not on the agenda, not after request we voted on, but in the packet, there's two of those required pieces. The first is a residential anti-displacement and relocation plan, and what that says is we will not use these. What it says in essence is that we will work hard to not use these grant funds to displace people of low and moderate income from their housing. If we do, we have to have a plan to assist them. We're talking about unoccupied property, so that's not an issue here, but essentially that's the requirement. And then also in the packet, there's a section on municipal policies and codes, which is also a requirement, and that is more extensive, but it's broadly related to having equal opportunity employment policy, having a fair housing policy, which again generally pertains to making sure no one is discriminated. Further down, there's a use of excessive force policy, which does not apply to us, but we don't have a law enforcement agency. But nonetheless, it's part of it. Things like code of ethics, rules related to federal lobbying. So these are all issues these are all policies and issues that we are essentially in compliance with. But nonetheless, just wanted to flag those because it's fairly extensive. And then also included as an extra attachment, the bond vote primer updated for select board comments from the other week. So I think now it's final. I did not include the map at the end, which was in the draft, but that's the final that goes out to residents. So I think that is essentially all set. Do you want to update on some other opportunities?
I guess, can we just pause for a moment? It looks like Tori has her hand up. Go ahead.
So just for clarification, these policies, the residential anti-displacement relocation plan and the municipal codes, policies and codes thing, that is from the Vermont Community Development Program, and these are the model ones. They say we have to adopt to get the money.
Yes, that is correct. Doesn't have to be done today.
Other questions or comments? I will note there are a lot of information. Tom shared them. I thought it was pertinent to discuss them tonight while Tom is still here and can answer questions, but we can adopt them formally on February 2nd or at some point prior to March 16th when we need to submit all of the compliance for the CDBG grant.
I don't foresee myself having a problem with these, especially since it's like we have to get the money, but I would appreciate just the opportunity to like thoroughly read this, and not.
So that's Randall Meadow, and then Tom noted that he updated this. If there's any select board comments, and then we had talked about ways to share that publicly. So as soon as this update is done, then I think this is all good to go out. That's Randall. Dana, more different grant summaries?
Yeah, no, quick question.
Sorry, and I've been bad all meeting. Name, role, your hat you're wearing right now.
Sorry, Dana Allen, flood resilience grants manager for Waterbury contractor. Also on the planning commission, not speaking as a planning commissioner this evening. Who should I send a quick presentation to for this group? Tom?
Yep.
Okay.
Is it? And for the record, I'm just showing everyone your entire inbox.
Yes.
This is the millennial.
Well better. Okay, so while Tom's putting that up on the screen, basically, I've been working on a lot of different projects, and I wanted to provide a quick update, and I would like, basically to let you know where we are with a variety of things. We can just advance to the next slide.
Can folks see that online?
Yes, sir.
I think I have to reshare.
Gotcha. Hold. So yeah, while we're sharing that, so I just wanted to provide this or give a brief update on what I've been working on. And also we have maybe some decisions to make as a group, as a select board for staff direction. So I guess I'd like some input on that once we get there. So that's all shared. Okay, perfect. So Randall Meadow floodplain reconnection is the project we're working on. Woody Avenue housing is a planning project. The townwide flood study is another planning project. Of note, those first three have been funded through the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Fund. So we have been essentially, we've been given a letter that says, we'll give you this money pursuant to you meeting certain conditions, some of which Tom just talked about for Randall. There are some others for Woody Avenue and the townwide flood study. And then there's this fourth project out there, this Union Street Housing Acquisition and Redevelopment Project, which is equally under the CDBG-DR. I'm going to use that acronym, so Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Fund, CDBG-DR. That's a fourth project for which we have actually submitted a pre-application and have been invited to submit a full application. So,
Pause for a minute.
Yeah.
Can you just specify the townwide flood study is a little different than the first two and why?
yes, that was in the presentation deck, Alyssa.
Oh, great. Okay,
We
sorry.
have all kinds of stuff. But yes, townwide flood study is actually under the umbrella of the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission. we put in a subsection of a larger grant, they were awarded that grant, we get part of that money. So they're the administrator, they are the primary applicant for this flood study. We'll just get awarded money to do this particular study. So important distinction. We do talk about it in the deck. Tried to cover my bases. Let's advance real quick.
And just so people are clear, we'll see if we can do this in real time, but if not, we'll do it soon. This is gonna go on the website with the rest of the materials. I just emailed the attachment to Cheryl and maybe she can do it in real time, so it's there. I saw someone taking a picture and it'll be up there very soon.
Question from Kay.
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah. So as audibly hearing the pearl clutching in the audience from Union Street mentioned, as I have no idea what you're talking about, are we going to talk about that at some point?
We are, and that's actually a very important thing that is honestly one of the reasons that we're here tonight doing this update, because we need to talk about it.
Okay.
So, real quick, floodplain reconnection. This is our 4.3 million in design and implementation. Thomas talked about this. This is the $2 million bond vote. This is our big floodplain reconnection project. We were lucky to get $2 million. We're really happy about that. I don't know if we need to talk about this much beyond, we are in process of getting this grant essentially contracted and administered. We have a 5-year window. And I do have kind of a timeline at the end showing sort of this, it's basically a Gantt chart showing like potential timelines for all this. We have about a 5-year window to spend this money. Technically it's 6. We've been asked by VCDP as a courtesy, Vermont. See what the, thank you very much. I'm lost in acronyms. They've asked for a year to close out the grants as a courtesy. If we had to push it, I'm sure we could. But essentially we have a 5 to 6 year window for this project, starting from when we're contracted for it. Does that make sense to everyone? Is that fairly clear, this one? You can advance, it's just the concept design. Just go one more. I think we've all seen this, but just something to note in this particular grant. The preliminary studies, that green line there shows the upstream impact. It's about 7,000 linear feet of flood reduction. And so I think it's just it's important to note for this one that this does have a widespread impact that goes potentially upstream of the Route 2 bridge over the Winooski. So I think that's just very important. This is a project that benefits the entirety of the town. Next slide. This is a Woody Avenue housing planning grant. So Woody Avenue, it's the old Armory site, not to be confused with the Armory up by the highway. But essentially we put in for a $300,000 grant through the CDBG-DDR program. It allows us to take a really close look at engineering and architectural feasibility. It allows us to do a bunch of public outreach. It also allows us to do a market study with financial modeling to essentially say, if we build whatever we might build, what's the market for that? Who buys it? And how do we finance this so that it can meet our goals? So there's no, just to be clear, this is a planning study. There's no preordained or prescriptive outcome to this. We don't have that in hand. So this is purely just, we want to look at this site and see what we can do with it based on what it is. Again, 300K planning grant, 5 to 6 year window to execute. So ideally, it's a planning grant. We'd like to execute faster than that, but that's our window of time essentially. And if we want to advance to the next slide, it just shows the property that we're talking about. I think everyone kind of is familiar with it generally speaking, but it's that parcel right there along Armory Ave, now known as Woody Ave. Any questions before I go on to the next one? Same 5 to 6 year window. Again, it'd be nice to execute faster than that, but you know, we still have to issue an RFP. So we have a lot of steps. We have to get environmental release for the site. We have to get the contract executed, issue an RFP for contractors to actually do the work. contract with them, start the project. So that is still in process. We're working on the RFPs. That's something that Tom has been drafting based on our tasks and budget that we put into the grant.
And don't we have to remove the Armory building in order to?
Not as part, so this is planning, this is not implementation. So as part of this grant, it's very different from Randall. We're not doing any earth disturbance movement. It's just what are our options? Ultimately, that will likely be part of whatever plan they come up with, because I think the town has indicated that it's not necessary to have that whole building, et cetera, et cetera. So, but very much TBD. We can go on to the next one if no more questions. Sorry, I know I'm flying through this, but I wanted to give an overview. This is the CVRPC led grant or administered grant for townwide flood study planning. So essentially it's another planning grant for survey modeling and alternatives analysis, which gives us a cost benefit for some of our other sites. So essentially what does this mean? Well, we've already focused on Randall Meadow. We know that that's a priority in town. That popped to the front. That started in 2013 with that so-called choke study, right? So we knew that that was a priority then. There are other projects in town that have been identified over the years through a variety of different studies. We've never looked at them closely. This is our opportunity to create a pipeline of additional projects that could have benefit to the town. So Randall has a great benefit. I think we said what, between 0.3 and 1 foot of flood reduction, depending on storm, execution, et cetera. This gives us a chance to look at additional projects where we could potentially knock down flood elevations even further. Will they have a design cost and an implementation cost? Yes, they will. The thing that I've been working on is lining up multiple pots of funding in the state and also via federal programs. So one of the things that I'm hyper focused on with this particular project is lining us up for clean water funding, also for clean water state revolving funds, funds essentially, grant funds, not loan funds, and other state and federal programs. So if the hazard mitigation grant program comes back around through FEMA, or if the flood resilient communities fund comes back around, we have projects that are in the hopper ready to go. So this is likely to be around $100,000 administered by CVRPC. We're going to have to create the scope and issue the RFP ourselves. It's going to be much more nimble than doing one giant $750,000 grant behemoth. But this is something that's really important to the work that I'm doing. And I'm really glad that we got this money because I've been looking for this money for a while. So this is really important. I'm going to pause there. Any questions on that?
This is, I just want to say, this was, I think, our third time applying for this money. First, there was hazard mitigation, there was brick, and now finally it happened.
Lake Champlain Basin Program. So this is the fourth application. So.
Did I hear the brick may be reinstated?
I don't know. I've heard FRCF might come back, Flood Resilient Community Fund, which is exciting. That's actually great because that would be in-state money, not necessarily tied to federal dollars. But that's a rumor at this point. I will definitely keep my ears open. I'm in constant contact with like Pat Moldman and a variety of other people at the state. So like, I'm hearing what I can hear, but there's a lot of uncertainty, as you all know. If you advance to the next slide, it'll show just kind of the extent of that study, but the area outlined in red, it's hard to see on this. Sorry, I could have made it larger. Main stem of the Winooski, essentially from Bolton Dam up to the ice arena, a little bit beyond, a little bit of Little River, sort of up to the dam, maybe a little bit below, and then Thatcher Graves up to the country club, basically Ductile. Looking at floodplain reconnection options or other flood resilience benefits there. So that's the extent of the model or the survey, and then the model will cover that extent as well. Can't state how critical this particular study is. I'm really excited to be doing this and get some benefits from this for project development. This is huge. So, all right. Union Street housing. Let's talk. Okay. So. What is Union Street housing? So this was an idea that we hatched because we watched FEMA buyouts stalling throughout town. And so there are 4 properties on Union Street. We do have a map on the next slide, so we can kind of look at that real quick. Again, kind of hard to see with the dark, but basically the 4 properties going up to the triangle there, we're all in the FEMA buyout program.
Yeah, 2 are now ours.
Under the buyout. Yeah. So under FEMA buyout, those properties can't be developed for anything essentially in the future. However, the property on the triangle and then the next one back, so kind of a gap, the one next to the blue roof there, I think it's the Gates property. Those are still in FEMA buyout limbo. And so we approached CDBG-DR funders and said, this is our situation. We're not confident that this process is going to move along quickly. And also we might want to retain an option to preserve some level of housing in this area. Can we pull them out of, if they want to, if these owners want to, can we pull them out of the buyout process? Can we acquire the properties using grant funds? And then can we essentially partner with a developer and an agency to redevelop these properties and then make them into 80% area median income affordable properties? That's a HUD requirement for these types of grants. And so we said, great, we can do this, legally defined affordable housing project potentially, right? So what we're looking at is buy them, knock them down, build something above base flood elevation as required by special flood hazard regs of town. So we're looking at structures that might be 7 to 7.5 feet elevated from where they currently are.
So garage.
Something. Yeah.
No net rise, like no net fill, no impedance of floodway. These are absolutely within the flood zone. Like we recognize that, not in the floodway, but in the flood zone, flood hazard area. Knock down the other 2 FEMA properties, nothing happens there as per FEMA rules. So we put together a $2 million budget to do this work. We submitted that under pre-application. They frankly were really receptive to the idea. We have zoning regs that now kind of allow us to do this. Both of those lots are very small, but they may be non-conforming, they may be minimum, but we can do this. We have special flood hazard regs that sort of allow us to, develop more safely in these areas. We said this could be a catalyst for how this type of thing could occur. And they said, sure, submit a full application. So that's where we are currently, and that's something that we need to talk about as, sort of as a group. The timeline for this application submittal is relatively tight. Woody, Tom, and Alyssa and I spoke the other day about this. We have to notice a public meeting by February 7th and hold that public meeting by the 22nd of February for a full application, which is due on the 27th of February. The application itself is a relatively decent lift, probably about 35 hours worth of work. So realistically, to get it done in that timeline, we need to pay someone, which we did for these CDBG TRs before. We leveraged some outside funding for that in the past. So we were lucky to get VHCB, Housing and Conservation Board funding. I've explored that option. We don't have that option this time around. So we're probably looking at a $4 to $5K nut to pay a consultant to submit this full application. Yes.
Why do we have that option this time?
Ready funding? Their VHCB funding rather? Because this is housing focused and the funding is more tied to resilience. So exactly. Yeah, it's the conservation side of VHCB. We didn't get any funding via the housing side. And to my knowledge, there's nothing there. So we're on our own for this one. It is a lift. Even if I were to write the grant, the lift is significant enough that my essentially contract by month it would be exceeded. So I just can't take it on. So. The reason that sort of we're going through all of this is, and we can actually go sort of to the next slide, or rather 2 slides on. We've already talked about this.
Can I ask a couple questions?
Sure.
You said $2 million. To do what? Demo the buildings and. put out RFPs or-
So property acquisition. Essentially using the comparables of the properties that we bought out at around $300K a piece. So there's other FEMA buyout properties were offered $300K and we took it. So we're making an assumption that we're about there for these acquisitions. Then we've got demolition costs, we've got construction costs, we've got some administration costs. I don't have the budget right in front of me right now.
So that includes pre-built costs?
It does. And there's also essentially the way this is going to work ideally, right? Developer puts up 2 single-family residential homes, 2 to 3 bedrooms apiece. They're offered under Down Street Development's shared equity housing program for these qualified buyers at 80% area median income. The way that it would work is like, I think we worked it out that each of these units would probably be around $400,000 a piece to construct. Given the engineering necessary, it's like a modular construction, so it's a little bit less expensive. So $400K to construct, grant funding would cover part of that, and then ultimately buyer would cover the rest. So, rough numbers right now, we're looking at like $80,000 through a VHCB housing program. They would cover part of that purchase cost, and then 120 would be covered by the buyer. So that's how we get to this affordable shared equity number. Yes.
Desire to create much housing as you can, or is it just a way to replace it?
We're basically taking 2 that are flood prone and essentially condemnable, or almost, they're not, the owners want, right? We get 2 units, or we get 2 safer units. We don't lose those properties from the grand list. And we essentially give someone an option to purchase. That's actually one of the reasons that we're working with, or that we're proposing to work with Down Street on this one, is that a lot of projects are rentals. And we've heard from the public time and again, and I think it makes a lot of sense, there should be purchase options. And so this gives us at least 2 flood safer units for purchase. So that's the pitch of this grant, essentially.
So my question or suggestion here is it possible, outside the box, scribble out the property line between the 2, create one bigger piece of property, get more housing units on there?
No, we unfortunately can't, because
Bigger back there.
well, they're staggered though, and that's the problem, is that the FEMA buyout properties are wedged in between. If we had contiguous property, 100%. But because of the FEMA rules, we can't do anything. So they have to be knocked down and left as open space. So we're constrained by the situation on the ground. I mean, yeah, if we could, that'd be great. It'd be cheaper.
Well, I have the same thought, but it seems like it's agreement to get houses for purchase as opposed to just rental houses.
That is the hope. Yeah, that's the pitch.
You have more on your slides, yeah.
Just the last one is basically just a schedule over the next few years showing how these roll out. And so the conversation that we had the other day this is perfect. We have this 5-year timeline. I know this is hard to read, but this is kind of all these projects stacked. Randall, Woody, the study, and then Union Street Housing. Union Street Housing is, potentially staggered by a bit because we wouldn't be awarded that if we get awarded that for several months. So we're taking on potentially these 4 projects. The modeling study requires a lot less administration and capacity at the town level. Randall, Woody, and this potential Union Street one would require some capacity at town level. So we're gonna need someone to essentially administer this grant. You know, whether that's an internal position, probably a part-time, you know, or a contractor. That is something that we do need to think about. I think that the essential question is this, right? Randall, Woody, and the townwide modeling study are essentially fait accompli. We've been awarded this money. These things, you know, barring unforeseen circumstances, will go forward. Union Street is still a choice. It's still an option. And so my question for the group tonight is, what is the appetite to push this forward, given that we are going through a staff transition right now? You know, we are going through a bit of a board transition. Just recognizing facts on the ground. And we're going to need some administrative capacity at some point for all of these, whether we hire it internally or whether we contract it out. That's it.
Thanks, Dana.
Probably too much.
I'm wondering if the timeline slide, Tom, which is like back 3, is maybe one to think. I'll say, speaking for myself, not as chair, I think it's really cool. We have a home ownership thing. I think the timing to need to do it right now, like, couldn't be more horrible. So I have concerns in that regard, but again, we're here to discuss it as a board and hear from staff, again, noting the facts Dina just said. Do board members have questions, comments, thoughts on this?
I just hearing back in my head, I think it was either Bill or Woody that said, you know, we took on a lot and we have a lot on our plates already. So I'm a little bit hesitant to add more, unfortunately, as much as I love this.
Other questions, comments from the board? We'll go right down the line. Roger King.
Yeah, I think, the Randall Meadow, the other, Woody Avenue, as far as it approves, but, we have a fair bit of contingencies to meet with these policies that, Tom went through, and, also getting this bond vote passed, which is not a fait accompli, are already a fairly big lift for the remaining few of us around the table.
You stretch.
So I just think that the cost benefit on the Union Street project isn't compelling enough for me to want to take that on at this point.
I'm gonna break my own heart here. I concur with Roger, as we have several massive projects in front of us that will probably eat into most of next year. And though the home ownership through Downstreet's shared equity program is something that I really appreciate that they do, and something that I thought was brilliant of them, I don't think this is something that we can feasibly pursue in next year.
I think that on the same, Union Street just doesn't have as much of benefits as the other 3 projects do. And not that it's not an important project, but I don't think we have the firepower both on a very transitioning staff with a very transitioning board, as Roger made and spoke. I just really question the cost benefit relationship to that union, you know, and I just don't think it's going to provide that big of a bang for, you know, in terms of units, you know, preserving a few properties for the tax revenues. And I'm hoping that, you know, their FEMA applications will go through and they'll be happy, and yes, we will have a small project, but I don't think it's the worst thing in the world.
So I'm not hearing any support to proceed from the board. I would note, I didn't lead with the staff recommendation, but what if I can speak for you? I think the staff recommendation was also, this is a lot for this moment. So I think that's about as many votes as you can get at this juncture. I will say, I share that. I think it's a great thought. I guess I will say the one other thing I like spitball when we met on Friday was, do we ask if like Downstreet or someone else wants to apply for this project? That wouldn't be a town admin, and we're following up on that.
Followed up on it.
And it's a no.
Downstreet noted that the town would obviously be the strongest applicant, and I implored Angie to consider, and Angie said, we've got a lot of irons in the fire. Asked the developer, and I said, okay, so I talked to the developer with whom we developed these plans, etc. And he said, well, obviously the town is the strongest applicant. And I said, I know this. And also, I'm not sure it's gonna move forward at the town level. So I will have that conversation again with this developer and see if there is any appetite for doing this. So it's not necessarily dead, but heard that the town doesn't have appetite for it. I'd rather be able to say no to an opportunity than miss an opportunity entirely. So
I was gonna add that I'm surprised that Downstreet would be willing to take something like this on. Didn't they just eat our ACDC?
which, sorry, no?
Randolph Area Development Corporation? Didn't
Oh.
they just take over the entirety of their properties?
They've also got like 14 to 16 million in CDBG grants currently, so it makes them a really poor applicant for this. And I think administratively, they're getting maxed as well.
Right.
So, you know, the conversation I had was, we're philosophically aligned with you. You're on your own, Junior.
Got it.
So I said, okay.
Dana, do you feel like you have what you need in terms of next steps?
Yeah, I mean, my February is freed up. It's great. As the snow starts to fall, you know, it's wonderful.
Does the board have other questions or comments? Is there any other public comments on any of what's been reviewed thus far that folks would like to add in person or online? Sure. Yeah, do you want to just come
The
up?
idea that they're coming up with purchasing houses to be purchased, I think that's a great idea. Is there another timeline that we could try to, I mean, things are really slow, so is there an opportunity that we could try to apply for this next year or?
That's a great question. I suspect, yes. The caveat being that if those buyouts go through in the meantime, it's sort of dead in the water, at least for 2 properties, and then it's down to 1, and then we're already losing economies of motion, so yes, with caveats.
Chris?
So it seems like our sticking point here to me.
And I'll just say, we've made a board decision, so 2 minutes max right now.
Yep. FEMA will come in, they'll buy the property, they'll demo the building, then you can't touch the property afterwards. Maybe it's worth reaching out to one of our congressional leaders and say, can FEMA reconsider this option, and if they're gonna pay to tear down the building, pay the owners for the building, tear it down, why don't they just give it to the town and let the town use it for some form of economic development? I mean, they would be further ahead with that option than to just leave it vacant. It doesn't make sense to me, so I don't know if Becca Ballin can take a hold of that and do something with it, or it'd be worth asking.
At the very least, I've been in touch with Vermont Emergency Management, and they're working a lot on these buyouts, and they're actually trying to really get clarity on what is allowable use on these properties. Rebuilding is definitely not in the current list, but there's a lot of fluidity with what is on that list. I hear your concern, and I would love to also see the means by which that can occur. It's a conversation that, like, I'm happy to reach out, like, I've been in touch with all those offices for other things like earmarks. So I can reach out to them and say, I think this has traction.
All right, I'm calling it. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
both.
sorry.
Please write to your state and federal delegation, because I bet they would love to know, and just, I'm aware of time tonight. So
Thank you.
I'm gonna move us on from this agenda. If there's other items, Tom, I think you can stop screen sharing. Our next agenda item is to consider a collective bargaining agreement. I think the board was gonna do a brief executive session for contracts, but I anticipate we will have action, so just everyone can stay in the room. We'll step out and plan to step back in 10 minutes or so. But we would need motions to enter executive session for contracts and invite the municipal manager and interim municipal manager.
I move that a premature knowledge of contracts would place the town at significant disadvantage.
For a second,
Second.
all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I move to enter into executive session with the town manager and interim town manager to discuss.
Again, we anticipate being back in 10 or so minutes, for action.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry, I didn't call to enter. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, 9:16, we'll be back shortly. All right, the board has exited executive session. It is 9:38 PM. On this agenda item, are there any motions? Is our meeting still recorded? Just make sure. Okay, yeah. Roger?
I move to approve the collective bargaining agreement and to sign a clean copy when it's available in the next 48 hours.
Second. Motion by Roger, second by Tori. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? And abstained. Great. Motion is passed, so we've approved the collective bargaining agreement. And again, we'll have printed copies to sign at our next special meeting. Alrighty, our next agenda item is to review and consider adoption of an updated special event permit. I think we should table this, but that's just my take at 9:38 PM.
No. No objections to tabling adoption of updated special event permits.
I'll take this screen.
Okay. By consensus, are we comfortable moving this agenda item to a future meeting?
Yes.
All right, so that then brings us to our two agenda items that we added before this meeting. The first one is a letter of support for a Waterbury paths grant. I think there was materials. I have not yet reviewed them. Roger, are you hearing your RW hat and are you speaking?
No, I'm going to recuse myself.
Okay, so I guess we are left.
I could, yeah, I could recuse myself as a select board member. What information on RW is something I can provide that.
Okay, so this is. We have a letter of support for a planning grant from the Recreation Trails Program and Waterbury Pathways Project Initiative. For pedestrian and bike trail networks within Waterbury. This is from a property owner.
I'm confused with you.
Yeah, that's a sample letter. Woody, if he would provide a similar letter on behalf of Public Works, he said he would if the select board endorsed the project, which is to have a 18-month planning grant, $20,000 planning grant to coordinate the improvement of pathways in and around Waterbury. Phased in with the mitigation initiatives that Dana outlined earlier this evening.
So are you proposing we drop a similar letter of support from the town?
Yeah.
And that's because there are some town lands that would be crossed in these pathways and trails.
Right. The town is going to own, the Randall Meadow and Deck Road. So, and the town would provide, maintenance. Pathways,
When do you need this letter of support?
February 1st. So, we have a special meeting, we could,
Yeah, could you, my thoughts are if you could draft an actual letter that you would for the select board to sign, that I feel more comfortable looking at than the concept of an idea.
Other questions or comments from the board on this? Is that plan amenable to all? We'll review a formatted draft letter at our next meeting. All right, well then that moves us to our second added agenda item, which is a special event permit, and I believe we have printed copies of it in the packet, and I was told there are folks here from it. It is Black Cap Workers United. I don't know if anyone's here to speak to it, and the board.
Oh, they were just sitting right there. Let me see if I can.
Yeah, they've been pretty patient.
Yeah. Come on, step right up.
Hi, sorry about that.
Thanks for waiting so long.
Of course.
Yes, we have a copy of your event permit. I don't know if you could just speak to what the event is and what you're planning on doing.
Yeah, so Black Cap Workers United, we just passed our 1-year anniversary when we elected to unionize, and we were just kind of looking for an opportunity to celebrate all the hard work we've done over the past year. We've really appreciated, especially as we've been picketing, the community support we've gotten from Waterbury, and we're just kind of hoping for an opportunity to just kind of spread some positivity, give the community a chance to come celebrate with us. There will be live music, there will be free food, free drinks, stuff of that nature.
Great, I guess, so I'm curious where this is taking place. Is this in the street, in the park, both?
Yeah, so it'll be sort of in the middle. Ideally, it would be in the park, but because of all the snow, it would probably spill out into the street in front of Black Cap as well.
Okay. Any board members have questions or comments on this? Mike?
Don't take this the wrong way, but is this in response to Burlington issue, with Black Cap, closing their facility there?
That's what our efforts over the last month have been in response to, but this would be more about just kind of celebrating everything we've done over the past year. Before the picketing started, we've been working to ratify the contract, and that was a lot of work that we've done. We want to give ourselves an opportunity to just kind of celebrate that and kind of use what we've been doing over the last month and kind of combine the two as a way to just kind of celebrate everything that we've done.
Appreciate that. Waterbury is always good for a celebration.
We agree.
James?
I'm gonna assume because the park is under 2 feet of snow right now, that you'll probably need, we wouldn't need to close the street entirely, but the parking spaces at least would need to be occupied. Yeah.
Substantial swaths of the park are gonna be hit by the snow blower and prep for Winterfest, so You might have some, I don't wanna call it green space there, but open space there. Fantastic.
Other questions? I'll confess, I'm just hesitating because I'm not sure what approvals we need, noting that we just tabled updating our event permit, but are we being asked for a road closure? Have we reserved the park through the recreation department? I'm just trying to understand where we're at.
Mainly we were requesting a road closure.
Clarification, which road? The one immediately in front of Black Cap or the two,
The
all
one,
three surrounding the park?
I would imagine it's Rotarian Way, right?
Yeah, Rotarian Place.
You said you were serving drinks. It says you're not serving alcohol.
No.
Just Coke or whatever.
Hot cocoa with coffee, yeah.
Okay.
Other questions or comments from the board?
Sort of like music. We reached out to a band that specializes in activist events like this. They haven't responded back to us yet. I was gonna follow up with them tomorrow. If nothing else, I know that one of our union members has a friend that plays guitar and he would probably be there. Nothing super huge. That would cause a disturbance.
I'm just wondering why, this is being held in Waterbury. Do you have any union members that live in Waterbury?
We don't have any union members that live in Waterbury. But like I said, we've gotten a lot of support from the community here and we want to respect that. We want to acknowledge that. And also our picketing efforts are ongoing and we saw it as sort of an opportunity to kind of combine the two. We would be outside the Waterbury location regardless and sort of we really liked the space and sort of saw it as a way to turn it into more of a positive event.
I have more thoughts, but one of the thoughts I have right now is just with the live music, just be aware if you have speakers for that. A lot of the residents around that area are very sensitive to the noise level that produces, so just be cognizant.
That's good to know. I don't believe we would have any speakers, but I will keep that in mind.
What's the time?
Just suggest if you haven't already, you should reach out to the recreation director to make sure there's a return.
Got it. I will. Thanks.
Other questions? I guess for parking and traffic management, I'm not seeing anything. We're asking for a road closure that is a one-way street this way, so we're gonna need a plan for residents who can't use the road if we're authorizing a closure to get to and from their homes.
The one-way street. I think I know what street you're talking about. Are they? The image I have in my head is that they're able to go up this street in, are they not able to come back out that way?
I miss them, like Park Rows and Park Places and Park, but got the train station here. This street here is a one-way, so normally folks need to come through in front of the train station to go one way into their home.
Into their houses, they'll have to go up a one-way street.
Are the streets on the side, are those one-way streets?
One is not.
I wasn't aware of that. I may have to consult with my people about exactly what the plan would be for that.
Roger.
I'm gonna move that we table this until we get better detail.
Second, I will note that this event is scheduled to be held this coming Sunday, so at most it's viable.
Sunday, two
February.
Sundays. 2 Sundays, okay, thank you. Okay, so there's that. 2 meetings there.
Yeah, I guess I'll just, yeah, go ahead. No. Well, to be second.
No. Motion was not seconded.
Was the motion to table it to a future meeting?
There was a motion, there wasn't a second.
Okay, so we're just hanging out. I'll just speak for myself, not a chair, and just say, I have no problem with the event and want to be clear that like, this is not an event related thing. If we're being asked to close a road, we normally need a road closure plan that acknowledges the existence of a one-way street in the vicinity and a plan for dealing with traffic in that area. So personally, that's what I'm concerned about in terms of what we have presented for us, as well as reserving the park with the recreation director. So I'd be happy to consider this at one of our upcoming meetings if those details are worked out.
Understood, and I can talk to people, make a plan for that.
I'm gonna second Roger's motion.
Motion and a second to table this to a future meeting. Is there any further discussion? Right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Right. We are gonna schedule a future meeting momentarily. I know you've already spent a ton of time with us tonight, so thank you for your patience. We're happy to email you when that is, and we could put this on a future agenda again, either at that next meeting or we have a regular meeting February 2nd. So those are both available for that.
Okay, yeah, I think I could be here on the second.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, that brings us to, back to the regular agenda, municipal manager and board member updates. Is there any board members who would like to start? None of them. Okay, I'll go and say I've been busy meeting with Tom and Woody about flood grants and drafting the warning for a town meeting. I did not attend the last housing task force meeting, and thus concludes my updates. This next story, I'm just telling you. Do you have any board member updates?
I do have a board member update. Hold on 1 second. Else wants to.
I can.
Roger, thank you, sorry.
Yes, our new rec director, Erica Linsky, joined the Winterfest Planning Group, and have programs scheduled starting tomorrow and running all the way through Sunday. Those are available on the W calendar or at the Winterfest website.
Back to your turn.
Now I'm ready. Thank you. The tree board met, unfortunately, I missed it. I think they've already written me off since they know I'm not running again, but are going to reapply for certification as, for Tree City USA. And they are working on they'll have a decision on February 13th on where their 2026 Arbor Day ceremony will be, as well as, time, location type of celebration and the tree they are choosing to plant. So I think that will be really cute and fun. If anybody wants to attend that, I'll have an update next select board meeting. And then also Rotary is having pipe breakfast on February 14th at the American Legion.
Is that Valentine's Day?
It's,
It usually is.
but
Valentine's
very
with
few
my-
people have Valentine's Day plans for breakfast, so we're taking advantage. Come have a double celebration.
Chocolate pancakes.
I will be there. Anything else? Thanks, Tori. Kane, any
I
updates?
will go next. As an explanation to my abstention on the contract vote, I have formally accepted a job with the American Federation of State, City, and Municipal Employees as a field representative. That's
Any
my,
other updates?
that is my update.
Mike?
Just a real quick, I discussed it last week. I know it was kind of moved, but I hope that we have a discussion, not on the second, but the following meeting about zoning violations.
Okay, noted. Thanks, Mike. Any other questions or comments? Tom, any updates?
Couple things, full credit to Duncan McDougal, who did most of the work, a little bit of assistance from Bill Woodruff, but submitted a grant for a little less than $11,000. There's no match required. This is the Vermont Small Scale Highway Safety Program. Yeah, for the grant, we're mostly an offshoot of the Better Connection study, but much of this is Edge lines and Waterbury Center, some other warning signs and traffic calming ideas were submitted. Secondly, Francine Chittenden with the Friends of Waterbury Reservoir is working with staff here. I did that the last year or two. Neil Eckers to meet this year to get their grant submitted for the greater grant, which is pass-through funds for the town. That's on track, I believe. And then the town has hired Samuel Granfield as assistant director. He's got a history with the town. He's worked with us doing summer maintenance for a couple of years now, and he's gone for firefighter also. Granfield.
So. Deputy Director.
I forget if we call it deputy or assistant.
Also, one more, sorry, I would just like to publicly thank Alyssa for her hard work going through the collective bargaining agreement, because I know I was cross-eyed looking at it after months of working on it with Jane. And I really appreciated all the edits and contributions that you made and insightful comments to this. So, thank you.
Sure. Tom, did you have any other notes? All right. That brings us to review agenda items for next meeting / determine next meeting date. So noting that we have next meeting of the Waterbury Select Board February 2nd is our regular meeting. We need to do a special meeting for the warning, and we also said we'll sign the ratification paperwork. And that needs to be before February 1st, which is a Saturday. So what is Sunday? Oh, thank you, Sunday. Thank you. I would love to not meet this weekend, having met many weekends in January. So what are folks Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday like? I am away Thursday afternoon for work.
Just to note that this room is scheduled for a Winterfest / Historical Society program on Thursday, 5:30.
Great, and I will say, I mean, I think hopefully it will be a short and straightforward meeting. We can put one on Friday.
How's everyone's tomorrow look?
We have enough coming to.
Yeah, it wasn't that many edits.
I
should have everything updated.
I board a plane to Utah at 3:00, so starting at 2, I will be gone tomorrow. I can attend in, via Zoom.
11:45 call that's taken forever to book. Would folks be okay with either 11 or 12:30?
11 works for me.
Yeah.
Let's go with 11 a.m. with the, I will be gone at 11:45, so I don't think it should take that long. So we'll call a special meeting tomorrow. We're gonna be under 24 hours warning notice. So then it's an emergency meeting.
It's an emergency meeting.
What time tomorrow?
11 a.m. is that working?
I had the doctor.
What about Thursday morning? Question mark? Or Friday morning?
I got something at 11.
I mean, I can attend via Zoom, but
Screen share. I mean, you just won't be able to sign it, which sucks, but or you can scan and sign it.
Yeah.
So Thursday.
It would need to be before noon for me on Thursday.
I can make 10 work.
9 a.m. on Thursday, okay, folks? So that can be a special meeting. We'll notice that tomorrow.
And that's in Utah, that's 7.
Is that okay? Sorry, Tori.
No, let's do it. There will be nothing else going on. Let's do it, but I'm just.
I hope you got nothing going on at 7 a.m.
All right, so we're scheduling our special meeting for bright and early 9 a.m. The agenda items will just be the town meeting warning and signing ratification. Is there any other things that need to happen then, or otherwise we can let everything? And reviewing our letters. Okay. Does that work? 9 a.m. Thursday, the 29th? I will inform Carol Dawes of the plan tomorrow. We will also get a full edited update and legal review of the warning prior to its Thursday morning presentation, post on the website, et cetera.
Expected time.
Yeah, hopefully that's.
Half an hour, half an hour.
Well, I'm just saying it the most.
It's a little Shepard joke I won't make right now, but let's say an hour or less.
Okay.
Town meeting warning, the letter of support for RW.
Either way, listen.
and-
Sign the final copy of the.
I respect your privacy.
That's
And
it.
I'll leave this-
Oh.
She's listening.
That's-
But she respects your privacy.
All right, Melissa, all right, sorry to Tori with the time change, so that would be 9 AM. And then for other future agenda items, for Monday's meeting, Mike Bard won't be here. The Stowe Land Trust wants to present to us, which also involves inviting the Planning Commission and the Conservation Commission. I can push them if the group feels really strongly. I did say yes, so pardon me, they just want to do a 10-minute update on what they've done. So we can do that. Mike, you asked to push the zoning violations to February 17th when you can be there.
Right.
Okay. Is there any other items? We also have this event permit again for February 2nd. I'm sure I'm missing other things, but we'll review them. I'll say final review of town report, Cheryl. So that way my accountability measure.
You owe it to Tori to get the event permit approved.
Oh, thank you. You're right, Tom. Our table's event permit.
I heard special event, and so I just thought it was my favorite.
We're doing it both. I mean, the irony of having it on and then using it in real time. Any other February 2nd items? Kane, is that a hand raise or
No.
just admiring your hand?
I was admiring.
Okay.
It's really worth the art.
All right, we've already had one executive session. Do any other agenda items? All right, anyone need any other executive session? Okay, I will take a motion to adjourn.
I moved to adjourn.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.